All right, real happy to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. She's one half of the sports card. I'll say without trying to be the better half of the sports card couple. But we're going to talk about cards and a lot of stuff she's doing in the hobby. Katlyn Gacesa, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. I've seen many of your podcasts and love all your guests, so it's good to be added to the amazing list now.
All right. Well, we appreciate you making some time for us, Caitlin. I said that tongue in cheek with your husband. No offense meant, but I think all men say that, right? My better half. So I just kind of went with that kind of standard. But you're from the Philadelphia area. Kind of talk about how you got your start in the hobby. I know it's the kind of the standard podcast opening question, but I think it's important to kind of get that baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my husband and I, Joey, we are just outside the Philly area. We say the Philly area, but we're really Harrisburg, Hershey. But we're diehard Philly fans. We're diehard sports Philadelphia fans. So yeah, we got started in the hobby about a year and a half ago, probably more than 2 years at this point. A friend of ours noticed that we were big sports fans. We go to hockey games, we go to baseball games, and he was like, "Have you ever collected cards before?" And we were like, "Collected what?" And like we're collectors at heart, so like we collect like pins and coins and all other random knick-knacky things. And he was like, you should look into this. And one box later, another card later, and then it just kind of spiraled, and we decided, you know what, let's go into this and just kind of go all in. And we love it. We love all of the community, the people, and the friends we've made, and it has been such a inviting thing. And then about a year and a half into it, I got a job in the hobby, not thinking it would be kind of a career direction I would want to do. And I saw the passion and excitement, and that's kind of how our story began. And it feels like it's growing and changing every week and every day.
Yeah, much like the hobby, right? It's crazy how fast time does go, and you mentioned like your sports fans, like that's not new to you, and it was just someone said, hey, do you know like there's cards as someone kind of coming in like that. Was it a little bit overwhelming at first or not necessarily?
I think it was a little overwhelming because we didn't know where we were going and what direction we wanted to go in, because we started off collecting football and basketball cards because that's what everybody was doing. And it felt like, oh, we needed to be in that space. And as baseball fans and as Phillies fans, we were like, oh, let's look into baseball cards. We thought prospecting would be hard and difficult. And after a little bit of time, we realized, oh, it's not necessarily about like the direction. You don't have to prospect. You don't have to collect rookie cards. You can collect the things that you really like and enjoy. And we kind of learned prospecting over time. So it's been kind of a fun transition moving from the football and basketball side to more of the baseball side. And though we're the sports card couple, our primary is baseball, but we do enjoy collecting some football and basketball on occasion. And we're kind of in the off season collecting a little bit of basketball. So it's been fun to learn and grow in this space. And I think the community, especially like on YouTube and all the different podcasts, have been super helpful to get us kind of moved into that transition and kind of grow in this space.
You mentioned, heavy Philadelphia sports team fandom. Do your collecting kind of go that way as well, not just like naturally?
Yeah, I would say most of our collecting kind of fills in that space because we do a lot of shows in the Philly and in the Delaware and Virginia region. Philly sports is very popular here, as well as the Orioles in our area. So that's kind of where our primary personal collection goes. We also have our own individual collection. So like that's the unique thing about us as a couple is we have like our collection, I say, but then we also have our individual collections. Like I really, really love the home field advantage set. It's a really unique and affordable, everyone says downtown style card. And I love the look of them. I love the feel of them. So I've been collecting those since the beginning of that because they kind of started when we jumped into the hobby. And I was like, that's something I can get on. So I'm about like 15 away with the new series to get the whole entire set completed, not including legendary, but just kind of enjoying that. My husband really likes the Let's Go inserts, so he's been collecting those, and those are really cool case hits. So we kind of focus in on Philadelphia, but we have like a wide range of other cards as well in our collection.
Yeah, no doubt. It's nice to hear like you have your individual likes and stuff that you like to collect. You know, you have your kind of dual collection, and then you can go off and kind of add to your own PC, which is very very cool. And yes, I'm not going to argue with you. The home field cards are definitely aesthetically pleasing, and obviously if you're opening stuff, you're not going to be disappointed to have pulling one of those as well. And they have that down. It's I think it's Tops's kind of answer to the downtown of paninis and what have you.
Right.
But still great. Both of those are great insert sets that I don't think anyone complains too much about getting one of those because they're not that easy to get to begin with. You
And they're
mentioned,
not hard to find at shows either. They're really difficult to
yeah,
find at shows because they're very sought after as well.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. Anytime I have them, I'm a dealer. They don't last very long, as people like
Hmm.
to add them to their collection. You mentioned, being in generally the Philadelphia area and going to shows in Philly. And Philly's always been a major player when it comes to hobby and sports, both. But it seems like the last few years, I don't know. To me, I'm here in New York, really seems like a lot. You're hearing a lot more from that area, from collectors and content. Um, what do you attribute that to? Just more people from the area getting involved in the hobby, or maybe people just paying more attention?
I think it's a little bit of both. From our experience, our first card show was the Philly show, which was a little overwhelming because it's a very big regional show. And it seemed like, and that was around 2022, I think was the first Philly show that we ever went to. And it was like right after the boom and it started to kind of settle down. And it was a little overwhelming, to be honest. So there were a lot of people, a lot of things going on. And I think part of it is just the amount of marketing and the amount of dollars that are being spent in the space, number one. And number two is friends getting other friends into collecting and other people getting other people into collecting. If you're a sports fan, it's kind of easy to get converted into the collecting side of things. We kind of did that with family members and friends. We're like, oh, you love sports. Why don't you collect sports cards or memorabilia or that kind of thing? So I think it's a little bit of both. And that area, especially with the teams as well doing so well, like the Phillies and the Eagles having a pretty good season last year, and even the Sixers making the playoffs helps as well because there's a lot of media attention in that area. So a lot of people are drawn to that area. There's a lot of card shops that are popping up in the Philadelphia, New Jersey region as well. So I feel like I hear every other week of a card shop popping up, and at least once a month it's in that area. So that also contributes to it as well. And I feel like people want to grow that space because it's such a very populous region and very popular to travel to if it's for sports or other events or for just being in the city experience.
Yeah, no doubt. I obviously, I mean, you're from the area, so I'll acquiesce to your answer. But I think I agree with you. I think it's all those things. You mentioned LCSs. We're seeing more of them launch. We're seeing even existing LCSs open up additional locations. In your area, you mentioned being from the Hershey area. Describe the LCS kind of where you are. Do you have many? Are they good? Whether you want to mention names or not, so I'll leave it up to you. Do you have some in your area that you're fond of? Do you think there's room for more LCS growth in your area? I'll let you kind of speak on that.
Yeah, so we have a handful of local card shops in our area within a 30-mile drive, which is common for us to go to things. Is about a 30-mile driving distance, is like probably about 10 local card shops, I say, which is a lot for our area, for it not being a major regional area, because we are an hour and a half outside of Philly, but we're kind of like a hub because you can get to pretty much anywhere from Harrisburg. So you can get to Philly, DC, Baltimore, all of those places within an hour and a half of each other, which is really nice because we get to go to really cool card shows. but yeah, we always go to our local wax shop is Card Stadium, and then we have another really good friend of ours, Bailey. He owns Wow PA Sports Cards. He's got a really great shop with really good prices and good singles too. There's a shop on the West Shore that we go to, so it just kind of depends on where we are and what area we're in. There's a lot of good shops in Lancaster as well. We haven't been to a lot of those because we don't get down to that area as much. But yeah, we have a lot of really good local card shops in our area, and it feels like every day something's growing and something's adding to the area. I know our friend Eric with eDubs, he goes to a lot of card shows. He has a shop in the area. But I think like kind of my, I guess, big picture personal goal, it would be if we were to do it or if somebody else in our region would be to do it is to put one in the city of Hershey because of Hershey Park, the Giant Center with the Hershey Bears right now, and also the Hershey Park Stadium, very popular in our area for some concerts and events. I think it would be just good for our community, good for the economy in our area as well. And I think because the hobby is growing so fast in this region, and it feels like that's kind of the direction we're going in. We're doing a show in July, which would have happened at this point, the first week of July, and we went. He keeps selling out that show in Gettysburg every time, and it feels like every show in this general area sells out pretty fast. But again, that not only speaks to our region, but speaks to the hobby in general and how it's growing.
You mentioned, Hershey and liking to see a store. You also mentioned there, I caught you saying, Caitlin, about maybe you doing it. Is that something that you and Joey have discussed? Maybe being open in a future LCS, locally.
I think that's like really I think everybody in the hobby dreams of opening their own card shop. If you've collected cards since you were a kid or if you just started collecting, I think once you realize how big the space is, you dream of that. And I know that's kind of my husband's dream right now. Like right now, I think we just have so much growth to do and so many things to do like outside of that I think that's big picture. But right now, I think we're just really focused in on our careers, growing our name, growing our brand, but also just being there for the community right now. So as friends and as collectors as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I had a store myself many moons ago, 92 to 97, here in New York. And, I sometimes I miss it, sometimes I don't. But, like you said, it's if you're into the hobby and you love the hobby, I don't think I think there's very few people who have never thought about what it would like to have their own, LCS and do it and how they would do, seeing other people, how they do it, their own spin and take on it. And, I was back in the 90s before all the stuff we have now. So if I ever did it again, I don't have any plans to, but, I do have ideas that I think I would like to, implement. But probably more theory, more of a theory than it's going to be actually put into effect. But like you said, I think it's a great point. I think we've all thought what it would be like to do it. And I think especially if you live in an area where maybe there isn't one and you're like, hey, we can fill a void here and I'm not the only collector in the area. I'm sure of that. So there's a need and a call for it. So hopefully if that's I know you said it was Joey's dream. Hopefully that will get realized. That'd be really cool. And I know you guys will do a great job with it. Much like you do with social media. You're very informative, very sharing. You're not shy about your fandom, that's what fandom's about. Kind of your guys' approach with social media. What's kind of and I know you're in the process, it's going to get bigger and better, but kind of what's your thoughts and your approach to, social media?
Yeah, so we originally started our social media page as just me, and it was just me, branded to me, and he was like, "Well, you're the female collector. It's a really unique space for you." And I was like, "Okay, let's do this." But then when we would go to card shows, everyone would go, "Oh my goodness, it's the sports card couple," because we go together. So we kind of did like a turn, like a 180 and was like, "Well, this would be cool." So yeah, I think our focus right now is just showing like what we do as a couple, what's our space like. We want people to get to know us personally, know our collection personally. We want to spend time with people in the hobby. We want to gain friends and a community and that's our biggest thing with our page, is just kind of showcasing us. And though sometimes I am the face in the video, it's mostly because my husband has his own full-time job. So he's very busy with that. And then I also have a full-time job in the hobby. So it's easier for me to do the pages, but we've talked about recently, how can we grow this together? How can we help people get to know us? So on Fridays, we feature things about us, our favorite things, like we featured our favorite road trip snacks or our favorite cards we've picked up or recent pulls. So you kind of get to know our personalities a little bit more, and get to know what we've been doing, sharing what shows we're going to, photos of us at shows, what we're up to, because we want to build our community as a space for not only friends that we've made in the hobby, but for also for families and couples to see, hey, this is something you can do together. Even if it means you have your own collection, not necessarily like us, we have our collection together, but you can do it together and do this thing together, but maybe you have different directions in the space. And it's a lot of fun sharing that. And I really hope that we can kind of grow that, not just for ourselves, but for the hobby as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. You mentioned you like to go to shows. I think anyone in the hobby, I think most people in the hobby would echo that sentiment, Caitlin. You know, we're seeing more shows pop up at more intervals, and then we're seeing shows in cities that never really had them before. This is a question I like to ask people that like shows or are familiar with shows. Do you think there can be an oversaturation? Can there be too many, or not necessarily?
That's a great question. I think I've had this conversation a couple times with some friends recently, because we do go to the Philly region and there are a lot of shows in the Philly, New Jersey area. And it feels like there are shows every week or every other weekend. So I think, yes, in certain areas there can be oversaturation, but in others, I feel like there's opportunity for growth. Because I know for some friends that live in the Philly, New Jersey region, they're like, well, it'd be easier for us to go to a show in New Jersey and we'd be more open to setting up there. Whereas some people are just like, well, I don't mind taking, like us, we don't mind taking the drive to Chantilly or to Philly or to a New York show. So I think depending on what area you're in, there could be oversaturation. Like specifically the city of Philadelphia, I think there should be just kind of very specific shows that have built their brand. But even like there could be little local shows everywhere. If you can fill the space and you know you can get the people, why not do it? We're doing that in our region with some shows where there may be 70 tables, not like the big shows, but it still fills, it still gets a lot of people, because those are people that can't necessarily travel to a Philly or New Jersey region as well.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? Is get them in areas where no matter where you live, your commute to a show will be more reasonable than maybe it has been in the past. And you know, when I get asked that very same question, which does happen, um, my answer is the proof's going to be in the pudding, Caitlin. Like you know, when promoters start maybe seeing either less people come through the doors as consumers or less dealers signing up and buying, you know, paying renting tables at the show. That's when I think we'll know. I don't think we're there yet. I'm not going to lie and say I'm not concerned that eventually, you know, at the rate that shows are growing, that's always a risk. You know,
Hmm.
but like you said, you know, Philly, the big areas with regional shows, obviously you got the national, which I call the Super Bowl, the hobby. They're not going to be affected by something like that. But some of these smaller ones could be the first ones. I don't think we're there yet. So that's a good
Yeah.
thing, but it's something just kind of to keep our eye on as but the hobby's also growing. I think there's more people in it today than there were yesterday. And so there'll be more people that will be going to their first shows ever and catching that bug and looking for more shows to
Yes.
go to, you know, if not every week, you know, almost every week. And so
Hmm.
I don't think we're that close to it yet, but we'll see kind of how it plays out. You know, I got to ask the question. You know, as a dealer who did his first show at age 15 many moons ago, um, you know, when someone comes up to my table, I see a person. I don't see male, female, black, white. I was raised that way. It was instilled in me. Unfortunately, not everyone is like that. as a female collector and content creator too at this point, like how has your you know reception been? I'm assuming mostly positive, but is it more? Would you say it's more difficult being female, comparatively speaking, to maybe a male counterpart?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for myself, not as much. Part of it is because I do walk around with shows with my husband. But now that I'm working in the industry full time, I feel like I get enough respect because I know the hobby. I could talk about it. I have a lot of knowledge at this point. I might not be the most knowledgeable female collector in this space, but I know enough to be able to say, I know these products and what's going on and what's happening. So I feel like I was overwhelmed with the amount of reception being in this space because I think people want their wives or their significant others to be part of this space, and I get to be one of those people that drives that movement, which is really cool. It's overwhelming, but it's a little cool. But there have been many others that have come before me, like Sarah Layton and Kayla Collects and Mama Breaks, who have been in this for longer than I have, and I look up to them, and I know many people will look up to me as well as how can I be part of this space that's growing? And the only way you can grow it is by growing all demographics, all races, all kinds of people, and inviting them and making them feel welcome. That's the one thing that I always tell people, like when they're setting up at shows or when they're like, how do I get people and other types of people in? Just be a good person. Like, be welcoming, be inviting, make, if they don't know enough, teach them, make them feel welcomed into the space. And that's the only way we're going to grow it. And that's how I felt like I've been able to be okay with being part of this space, is I felt welcomed, invited, taught, and grown so much. So I've had very, 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 very minimal bad encounters. And I'm very grateful for that. And hopefully I could provide that for many others to come.
No, it's important. I don't even like that question, but I think it has to, because I've seen it, Caitlin, firsthand. I'll tell you a real quick story. Like I said, I do set up at shows as a dealer. I had a dealer like set up in the same kind of quad box as me. I wouldn't call him a friend or acquaintance. I know him. I talk to him when we're at the shows. And, a young lady came up to his table, and it was just a little, it wasn't rude. He was borderline, but he was sort of condescending. And then after their, exchange kind of was done, I turned to him. I know him well enough to, I said, you were kind of, I said, hey, you could have probably handled that better. Why did you say this or say that? Have you said that to someone who was male in the same? No. And I'm like, and he said something to the equivalent, like, well, she doesn't know this. I'm like, how do you know that? Have you met her before? No, that was the first time. And I'm like, well, you don't even know what that person knows or don't know. You're just assuming that. And he kind
Mhm.
of stood there and looked at me, and it was kind of like the light bulb went on for him. And I think he felt bad. And I hope that after that he's more aware of kind of what we say or how we interact with folks is important. This was a few years ago. So, but what he said, while like I said, it wasn't rude, Caitlin, it wasn't super nice either. And that young
Mhm.
lady might take that experience and I get it and just think all dealers are like that. Yet here I am standing next to and I'm not, but I'm kind of now lumped in because of one other dealer's actions. And that's the other thing I would kind of stress to folks is, while someone may be like that, not everyone is. To not,
Yes.
and again, in this case, he didn't know this young lady, but he had already, like, his verdict was in on her, and I think it's very unfair to do that. So I think he learned I hope he learned the lesson from just my conversation with him afterwards. I was very tactful. I didn't yell at him or berate him. I just wanted to point out a couple of things, and I think it was too late after the fact, unless he gets to interact with her again. Hopefully, there's a second chance. Maybe he could apologize and start off again. But I know that happens. I've heard female collectors talk about similar experiences. I hate to see it, but like you said, I think it's becoming more the minority story than what majorly happens, because I think, we've seen an uptick in women collectors, women holding positions in the hobby, such as yourself, even in with card companies. And I'll mention Sue's, who's held many jobs in the hobby, and a great example. And I think more people are figuring it out. I mean, I was
Yes.
raised to be like that, but I think we're seeing less of those kind of stories, or interactions or exchanges. I'm not saying they don't happen, but I just
Hmm.
think it's becoming less of an issue, and that's always a positive thing. And hopefully that continues, and you're carrying that torch and being an example as well now too, and that's important.
I agree,
All right.
100%.
Yeah. All right. We're talking about shows. We get, I'm not sure when this is going to air. The national may have been completed, or if not, we're right up against it. Talk about the national. I don't have you. I think you went last year. Am I wrong or right?
Yes, I've been the last 2 years. Last year for work, and the year
Okay.
before as a collector. So
Yeah. I mean, your thoughts on the national, and now for those that don't, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this too. You work with stand up displays, which I'm a fan of. I got one. I have a bunch in this room, but I got one kind of right here handy. And Dan and his wife do a great job, and now you're part of that team. Talk about the difference, like going as just where a collector, and now going as sort of part of the corporate presence, if you will, working in the industry, kind of wearing both of those hats. The approach, because you can speak to both of those.
yeah, so we went to the national when it was in Atlantic City, which I know many people have had good, bad experiences, but again, it was close to home for us. It's about 2.5 hours from our house. So we went as collectors for the first time, and it was probably the best experience and the best thing we ever did, because we really understood the heartbeat of the hobby and what it meant to be a collector in the space. So that was really nice to experience. So we really got to understand what is collecting, what's the space like, what are the people like. We met a lot of really good friends there. And then I had started my job at Stand Up Displays about a couple months later, and went to the national last year fully invested in the corporate space, and we had our own setup, our own display, and it was a very different experience, because you're not just there for the collecting side of things, you're there for the business side. You're there to make relationships, to network, to build a community within the business that you're working for. So it didn't change too much, but I think the dynamic and the way I talk to people kind of changed a little bit, because again, I'm working for an amazing company in the hobby, so I want to be able to grow their business, but also grow our brand too. So now that I've done it for a year, I feel like I've got a good handle of how I'm going to handle it in Cleveland this year, and how we're going to do our experience as not just working for Stand Up Displays, but also as Sports Card Couple. How are we going to build our brand? How are we going to build our community? We've got so many things already kind of in the woodworks for both sides of the thing. So it's going to be really exciting this year, and a little bit closer to home. So just a little bit closer of a drive for us, which will be helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you mentioned too, with the Atlantic City National, a lot of people bag on the city, Caitlin, but even for me in Syracuse, Central New York, it's just a 5 hour drive, so I don't have to fly. Same thing with Cleveland, about 5 hours, so I'll be driving there. There's something to be said, right, when driving to the National and flying to the National. Obviously, if you're driving, you can bring more stuff, pack more things, have more stuff at your disposal than taking an airplane where it's like $150 for every bag you check. I'm embellishing that, but it can get costly, and there's even a limit. You can't bring 10 bags even if you wanted to take
Yeah.
for them. So it's always a kind of a demographics issue, logistics issue, uh, getting to a show if it's not in driving distance. So I appreciated the Atlantic City national because it allowed me to drive there. I'm going to the show and then going back to my hotel, most likely to, sleep, take a shower, and then, repeat. My wife actually made
Hmm.
that trip because she enjoyed the beaches. So, I know the city gets a bad rap, and I know it's not what it used to be, but
Right.
if you're going to the show is still going to be great. I don't know if we'll get an opportunity for another Atlantic City National, but I never say never. I like to say so. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll do it again. I know there's other people shaking their head. No, John, I don't like Atlantic City, but to each, right? That's we were entitled to our opinion. So I don't have a problem if it makes its way back, and I'll be there just the same. I appreciated you saying like you're learning how to, balance out like working your brand and just being a collector at the national. I remember, this will be my fifth for as long. As crazy as it sounds, it's only my fifth or sixth for as long as I've been in the hobby. But even that first one, even though everyone told me what it's like, hey man, this is what it's like. That it still can be overwhelming, and the more I go to them each year, you learn how to navigate the terrain, how to economize your time, and make sure if you miss anything, it's very little, and you really
Yes.
cover as much. And the one thing I've learned is, with all your friends in the hobby, unfortunately, you're not going to connect with everyone. But if you can connect with as more than not, then that's probably a win. Rather, it's just a mass of humanity. Time it's a big show with lots of tables, lots of events. So it's tough to check everything off, but each year I think you get a little better at it. At least I hope
Yeah.
I am, and so I appreciated hearing you say that because it's exactly how it's been me through the 5 or 6 that I've been to, and
Yeah.
it's a great show, right? It has everything the hobby has to offer from the companies that are important to the hobby upstart companies. You got your breaker section, you got your content, the main stage. Obviously, you have the dealers with their so you're buying and trading. You got your trade nights like this. Everything that epitomizes the hobbies is found there. It's 5 or 6 days. I call it the Super Bowl of the hobby because you're not going to find. It's the place where you're going to find the most hobbyists at one time, any given day or week. And I know not everyone gets to go, but I always tell people at least try to get to one, see what it's all about. And then it's kind of like tattoos, right? You get one, and then they're addicted, and you want to go to all the nationals, right? And so um, I try to go every year, and so far since the first one, I have, minus the COVID cancellation, but that, there wasn't one, so I didn't miss it. It just didn't happen. So it's
Hmm.
just a great event. You get to see all the, meet people for the first time, meet people again, connect and that community, which is, as you spoke of, is so crucial to what we do, and be a boring hobby if we were the only ones doing it, right? So I
Agreed.
think so. So you're a fellow writer with myself on Hobby News Daily. For those that don't know, that's a great website with writers and content and whatnot. Kind of talk about doing that, and I mean, do you like to write? It's funny. I write for that Sports Collectors Digest. When I was a younger person in school, English was not my favorite subject. I did not really like writing. It's something I sort of took to maybe later. Maybe I did later. Kind of talk to your thoughts on writing, and is it difficult? Is it easy for you? Kind of your approach to writing content.
Yeah, so Danny had approached me earlier this year and said, "Hey, somebody reached out and said they'd be interested. You would be a great person to be part of this group." And I was like, "Sure, I've never really written before, but I'd be interested in giving my perspective." It's so funny because as a kid growing up in like high school, the two things I really hated was reading out loud and writing. And now I do both of them for a living because I also part-time radio DJ as well. So I speak on the radio, but I also write for Hobby News Daily, which is so funny that it's kind of come full circle. And the two things I hated to do now I do kind of part-time as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. When it comes to the individual articles, I kind of speak to what is going on in that season depending on what's happening. So when I put out my first one, I wanted to make sure everybody knew who we are, what we are, who I am as a collector, who I am going to be as a writer. And then I wanted to focus on things that we really enjoyed as a couple, but also what I really enjoyed. I know my most recent article is going to be out at this point. I'm writing about the MLB MVP buyback program and talking about the top prospects for the MVP, kind of just showcasing, okay, where are they numbers wise? Where are they in the sports betting rankings? And kind of giving collectors a perspective going into the national of what should you prepare for as Topps Chrome comes out? Who are the people you should be saving up those cards for? And I think that's kind of something I'm really passionate about is just telling collectors like, hey, here's some thoughts and perspectives on certain things that are going on. Here's how I feel about things. And here's how I feel about the national or shows I've been to. And how can you get more out of collecting as a couple? And how can you get more out of collecting as a female collector? And it's been fun to just kind of showcase those ideas and thoughts as we kind of grow as a couple, but also myself grow individually as a business person in the hobby. So it's been a lot of fun. I know sometimes when it gets close to my week, I don't have the best ideas, but sometimes they just kind of come to me. And like a few days before, I'm like, okay, I figured it out. This is what I'm going to write about. And turns out it was a really good article and people really enjoyed it. So that's been a lot of fun. And I'm really excited about this article that's going to come out this week. Well, this week as of recording, but now is out. So
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny hearing you say that. Sometimes when you're trying to think of what you want to write about, it doesn't come to you, and then it just sometimes will just pop in your head. At least for me, and sometimes I think is the best way is when you're not trying to think about it, it'll just hit you. But you mentioned something that I think is important too is even writing about your experiences, right? Sharing those. I think people appreciate them, and just people I don't think sometimes forget, you know, how we have similar experiences. It takes an article or something to, or maybe even from the female side of things, like to, as a male collector, I don't always realize maybe what, some of the pratfalls or experiences you might have to go through. And it's nice to hear about them, even if they're not that if they're negative, that's not nice, but to be aware that unfortunately, that still happens and we need to be better as a hobby
mhm.
and as a whole. So I think, sharing experiences are important, especially maybe someone who doesn't get to go to shows or gets out to, maybe they don't have LCSs as much in the area. They kind of look at those writing pieces as a way to be involved still in the hobby. So I think it's an important, and much like you, the younger version of me, Caitlin, would when it was speech time in English class, I tried to get out of it. I never was able to. My English teacher always made me do it. I passed, but I'm sure I didn't get the highest speech grade ever. But was not my thing, and even writing, like I said. So it's funny as you get older, how things you didn't like, you learn to like them and do a pretty good
Mhm.
job of them. Where before you had want nothing to do with them, and I think that's just maturing. And I think too when we get older, I've said this before on the show. I think some of that comes from we're worried about like what everyone's going to think about us, or and I think when you get a certain age and you're like, hey, I'm me. If you like me, that's awesome, and if you don't,
Mhm.
that's awesome too. That's on you. I think you care less. I don't want to say we don't care what people think, but we kind of like we're going to be ourselves, and if that's good enough, great. If it isn't for someone, that's all right too. And I think when you get to that point, that stuff gets easier to do. And I think that's for me. That's kind of how I got over sort of that hurdle. I think a lot of it was kind of self-imposed, worrying about if people are gonna like this, are they gonna laugh? Am I gonna trip over words during my speech? That sort of
Hmm.
thing. And the old ad, I
Yeah.
remember my English teacher, he would say, John, people, when you're giving your speech, think of everyone being naked out in front of you. I'm like, that's not gonna help me at all. So I don't know why you would say that. Or I played sports. He would always say, John, just you play in front of 1,000 people on a Friday night for football. You can't give a speech to 25 classmates, And I'm like, no, because they're staring right at me. When I'm playing, I blur all that out. It's a blur. He didn't really
Hmm.
get that. So I'd always have to do it. I
Yeah.
passed, but I don't think I got the highest speech grade for sure. But it's funny hearing you say that because it really echoes sort of my same experience
Yeah.
about getting up in front. Now I'm blessed to sometimes be on the main stage at the national and do a podcast for that. If we would have told the younger version of me you're going to do that, I would have thought you were insane. But we just, as we get older, we mature and can do more stuff than our younger versions
Agreed.
allow. So going back to stand-up displays, talk about kind of your role there, what you do. Um, they're doing very well, as you well know. You see their content all across the hobby. People using them. I have them. I have probably 20 all surrounding me at different places in my office. But kind of talk about your role there, and being a year plus there, kind of what the experience has been like.
Yeah, so about a little over a year and a half ago, Dan was looking for a sales and marketing leader, and I had applied to the job thinking, oh, it would be really cool to be in the space. I had some experience in some sales and marketing as well. And it was really an amazing change of events for me because it was kind of like a change I didn't know I needed, but I really enjoy it because I get to do something that I really love. So, as the sales and marketing leader, I work with the main businesses and the heads of businesses in the hobby, giving them custom display stands for shows, events, shops to sell in their shop because a lot of collectors really enjoy displaying their collection because you spend so much time and effort looking for those grail cards and those things that you've always wanted. And for them to sit in a box, why would they do that? Why not put it up and display it in your home and showcase it in your office like I have behind me? Just kind of all of the stuff kind of hanging out there of all of our favorite memorabilia pieces, which we're slowly growing. So we always like to say, put your collection on display because you worked so hard to get that specific card that you've worked for. Um, so yeah, I've been with them for a little over a year now, and it has been such an amazing experience. We are growing so fast that we've had to make some changes in distribution channels and how we plan things and how we go about things. And it's been a wonderful company to be a part of. And many of you that are listening know Dan and his wife. They've been running the company for 6 years plus years now, and many of you have the display stands even if you don't know it in your house from other groups or hobby members. So my job is to just build relationships with businesses in the hobby, market our brand, and grow the brand in general. If it's through having our products in shops, we're in MLB ballparks now, which is really cool with our Major League Baseball licensing, and just kind of continuing to grow the space. So I'm always looking for people to connect with, businesses, hobbyists, enthusiasts to share more about the product and how you can use them as not just items to display your collection, but also promotional items, give some value to your collectors who are coming to your booth, especially for the national, regional shows, Fanatics Fest, whatever show you're going to do. That's where my forte is in a sense.
Yeah, awesome. And like I said, as someone who uses them, the quality and of the stand itself speaks for itself. Probably makes your job a little bit easier because the stands are so great. But it's important too because as big as a hobby is, right? Not every man may be aware. What they might see them, like you said, but not know the company, right? You know,
Hmm.
you're seeing the brand on the front, but like who makes those? How do I get them?
Yeah.
What do they cost? What's the minimum? And I mean, you can order one or you can order 1,000. It's really up to the individual how many they want. And we've seen a lot of if you want to call them copycat companies kind of come out of the woodwork. But like you said, Stand Up's been doing it for 6 years, and they're sort of they're the leader in the space. And I had Dan on the show. We talked about some of the things that come along with being sort of the number one that you have to look out for. But maintaining that presence, and you're doing your part to help advance the company as well. I got one more question for you. This is probably the only time I'm going to put you on the spot here, Katlyn. I don't do it for every guest, but I have what I call a hobby magic wand. It's obviously not real. Be nice if it was, but I give it to the guest, and they get to make kind of one hobby wish. It can be whatever you want. An item you want to get, something you want to see less of in the hobby, something you want to see more of in the hobby. It's your magic wand. What are you gonna with your one time use of it? What are you using it for?
Oh my goodness. So I feel like just off the cuff, like you're like it's a lot to take in because that's a big responsibility right there. So I would say this is kind of something that has been talked about in the hobby a lot, but not necessarily implemented. So when the whole entire redemption situation came about, that they're like, oh, they're going to be eliminating redemptions and all of that stuff. I feel like the idea of having redemptions for certain items, like they did it with the memorabilia pieces and the Fanatics boxes, and that's really cool. I was so excited about that. But I think having a magic wand and say, okay, we're going to have special redemptions for experiences, like throwing out the first pitch at your favorite game, or being able to go on out onto the field for batting practice, or meeting these players in person and getting their autograph in person. Like that is kind of like my magic wand thing, because I know a lot of sports fans really like those experiences, or going to the Philly show for an autograph or something like that. But if you can get people who are sports fans into the hobby by getting them excited about having a chance to win an experience or be at the All-Star game or throw out a pitch at a game, like I feel like that could take us to the next level in a sense. And I know with the power of Fanatics and their relationship with the MLB and their upcoming relationships with the NFL and the NBA, I feel like that's where we could take the hobby kind of to a next step. And I'm curious to see if Fanatics Fest will take us to that next level, or if groups and hobby businesses will do that. And I know a lot of people have been getting athletes and other people involved, if it's through their breaking company or through relationships, and that's really helped grow the space as well. So I think sports fans, converting them to hobby enthusiasts, that's one way I feel like that would be really cool to have, because like I'd be ripping more wax if that were the case to try and win throwing out the first pitch of the Phillies game. Like I would do everything possible, or bidding on it on eBay. Like that would grow the space as well, because people would be bidding up these redemptions as well. So I think that's my big picture dream. We've talked about that. I was, as a couple, like, oh man, wouldn't that be so cool to like win an experience kind of thing? So that's what I would use my magic wand for.
I like it. I like it. I think we're going to see that. I think we're starting to see that on slowly. I think that'll be ramped up. And as far as throwing the first pitch out at a Philly game, that might just happen on your own accord if you keep going. And you won't need the redemption, hopefully, to make that happen. So,
Big picture is
and
going to put it on my
yeah,
vision board.
yeah, there you go. And but I like it. I like the answer. Sometimes when I ask that person that, and to each their own, right? They might come across it sort of like, I want to get rid of this, and that. And a lot of times I agree. Like you're right on. You took it on to a positive level, and that's always appreciated. So I definitely thumbs up that answer. I would have probably anyway, but I don't disagree. So very good. Well, I always give the guest, Katlyn, kind of the final word. Get out all your social medias that you want people to have or find you at. Plug anything you need, and take your time. Get that information out there for folks listening.
Yeah, so if you're interested in getting stand-up displays or learning more about stand-up displays, you can one visit our website standupdisplays.co. Go there, check out the website, see what we have available. First time people who sign up for our email list get a discount code. If you're interested in the wholesale side of things, the best ways to get in contact is by emailing me my first name, Katlyn, which you can see here on the video, or Katlyn at standupdisplays.co, or message us on Instagram. I'm always checking the Instagram page and reach out to me. We've got great wholesale pricing, around 50% off our MSRP, which is super awesome. So if you're looking to get something in time for a show or for your breaking company, I'd be glad to help. I do all of the design, some design work as well for those. If you're looking to follow Joey and I's journey, at Sports Card Couple on all social media platforms except for Twitter. There's no E in the couple because Twitter's a little bit shorter. But search us on all those platforms. We're always posting about shows that we're going to, things that we're up to. We're headed to the National as well. So if you see us at the National, make sure to tap on my shoulder, say hi. I'll be headed to all the trade nights. I'll be going to a lot of networking events. We're going to a Guardians game the day before the National. We'd love for you to join us. You could check out our social media for that. Otherwise, if you see me at a show or anything else, let me know. Oh, and don't forget, check out Hobby News Daily for all of the amazing articles, and check out my recent article about the MVP buyback program. And I've got some insight there on the top 3 in the AL and the NL, who are going to be the best people to pick up out of Topps Chrome and save their cards so you can get the most bang for your buck and support your local LCSs in return.
Got through that like a champ. You're probably one of the busiest ladies in the hobby. I don't know how you do it, but you do a great job.
I don't know how I do it either.
You do a great job with everything you're doing, Katlyn. You don't need me to tell you, but keep it up. Look forward to meeting you in person at the National, as you said. And I too, me and Danny Black, who was mentioned during our conversation, we're going to the Guardians game. I believe it's Wednesday night. So not the day before, but the first day of the show. After the show, we'll make our way over to I call them sometimes I'm still guilty of calling the Indians, but the Guardians game, they're playing the Tigers. So and I know a few other people that are attending either of those first couple of days. So that's the other thing that's great about the National, right? Is enjoy other things that each host city has to offer, whether it be sporting events, restaurants, whatever the case may be. I know even Ryan Nolan goes to concerts if there's a band in town. There's a lot. The show is awesome, and then the day's not over yet. You can do something else as well.
It's a long day, a long week.
Yeah, but fun, and then we count down the days to the next National to do it all over again. Well, Katlyn, thank you for making some time for us again. Continued success and best of luck.
Thanks so much for having me.